There is one England, there are many Englands. The England you start in will look very different to the new one you'll build. In Gallows Corner, all England stands before you. Where you start, where you end, and what stories you tell along the way all depend on the point crawl. In this first of 3 videos, aimed primarily at narrators running the game, we'll show you how the point crawl works and how to build it, with examples from my own campaign. Let's get started. Gallows Corner is a game about spaces and places. People are made in the spaces around them, and, in turn, remake those spaces in a never-ending loop. For many, this is a prison. If you are defined by the spaces you live in and cannot help but remake them, you can never escape. But for those of us willing to stand up, to challenge the means of production, spaces become liberatory. In Gallows Corner, there is a constant struggle between control and influence. The former, control, belongs to the rich and the powerful, lords and landowners, nobles and officials, the crown and the church. Control stems from the person, an antagonist, and from the places they own, the spaces of England. The latter, influence, belongs to the downtrodden, those peasants and outlaws who dare to stand up and challenge the powerful. It is fame and fortune, infamy and notoriety, reputation and legend. It is generated by standing up for what is right and helping those in need. For players, the aim is to build enough influence to stage a final confrontation with their antagonist, a moment called a showdown. But before we get to that final moment, there is work to be done. Smaller work, local work, work that challenges the antagonist and liberates the places they control. To tell these stories about the struggle against control, we must build the point crawl. Narrators, we're looking at you. It's time to bring England to life. In Gallows Corner, England is broken down into 8 regions: London, Essex and East Anglia, the North, Yorkshire, the Midlands, the West, the Southwest and the South. You start by choosing one of these regions and then one of the counties within it. For this video, using examples from my own campaign, we're going to choose my home region and my former home county, Essex, in Essex and East Anglia. We're then going to take our county sheet, shown on screen, and start building our point crawl. Step 1 is to assign the county verb, the word that shapes the action of the coming season. In Gallows Corner, we use verbs to determine the actions that players will take in the areas that they travel to. A table might want to fight, to build, to entertain, to nurture, to organise, to sabotage, or to learn. Each of these playstyles is equal and valid, and narrators should keep these desires in mind as they build their point crawl. In this way, the use of verbs provides structure and context to a session, to a place, and even to a whole campaign. Narrators, when your table have decided what they want to do and you have chosen a verb to capture that desire, you then need to come up with the county verb, a word that is going to shape the overall narrative that takes place in this county. This verb should be in line with the table's desires, but should also reflect the power of their enemy in the county. Let's look at an example from my own campaign group. During session 0, my table said they wanted to help the common folk break free from the chains of the monarchy. I write break as the county verb on the county sheet and begin to brainstorm how this captures the context of the region as it exists under the Crown's power. I decide that the Crown believes the people of Essex enjoy far too much liberty and is seeking to break their spirit before they ask for more. In practice, this looks like taxes and tithes, a crackdown on public assembly, and the increased presence of soldiers and mercenaries. The party will need to use all the tools and tactics at their disposal to inspire the commons and give them hope in the face of a sustained assault on their freedoms. In Gallows Corner, all forms of resistance and rebellion are valued. If players suggest a verb that seems to veer away from direct conflict with the Crown, for instance if they wish to grow a community, narrators should determine how the game's antagonists are preventing this goal from occurring, and create the arc of the point crawl from this point of view. Perhaps the antagonist is intent on destroying that new community's food supply, for instance, making the process of growing food a true act of rebellion. With step 1 done, we move on to step 2, assigning additional verbs to each point in the county. With an idea of how the county is suffering, the narrator must then add further context and structure to the points on the map. For each 100, borough and liberty on the county map, the narrator should add a verb. This verb suggests the kinds of scenes and events the players will encounter when they visit. While most of the verbs the narrator assigns should be relevant to the verb already assigned to the county, some should be outliers. This gives room for different experiences and stories to emerge. Let's return to my own home campaign. Essex has 23 hundreds, boroughs and liberties, each representing a point on the crawl. I start out by assigning verbs to the 100 of Witham, where I'll be starting this campaign, and those directly around it, the hundreds of Hinkford, Lexton, Thirstable, Dengie and Chelmsford, as these are the places my players will likely travel to first. I assign these verbs on the county sheet. Witham gets Celebrate, Hinkford gets Mourn, Lexton gets Protect, Thirstable gets Escape, Dengie gets Recruit, and Chelmsford gets Challenge. This is a good mix of different actions the party can take when they arrive in each point, and a wide array of scenes that could take place. I then proceed to assign verbs to the remaining points in the county, continuing to ensure that some are outliers to the county verb, which is break, for the purposes of telling more varied stories. Essex is coming to life. If you'd like to use this version of Essex for your own campaign, you can find it on the resources page on 3sailstudios.com. Step 3 is to create an antagonist and create the county clock. Knowing why the events that are taking place in your county are happening requires knowing who or what is causing them. Your county needs an authority who is oppressing the commons, and that authority needs a name and a motivation. In Gallows Corner, the crown, supported by the church and the nobility, is the ultimate power in the land. But the real enemy is the system that it is part of. That system is comprised of people at the top, the king, the major nobles and the fathers of the church, and those at the bottom, sheriffs, local officials and minor landowners. When your table first starts their adventure, they are unknowns, far below the concerns of those at the top of the pile, but they will be within the purview of local tyrants and despots, militia captains, bailiffs and officers of the courts, and local criminal leaders and collaborators. The narrator should spread these low-level officials and minor antagonists out across the county, and their power, in one way or another, should be derived from and linked to the county's major antagonist. Those with control over whole counties, rather than just 1 or 2 hundreds, tend to be sheriffs, lords and bishops, but we encourage you to get inventive. Boroughs, for example, will be led by mayors and supported by local guild members. Liberties are exempt from the Crown's control and could be led by any number of different people. Once you have created your major antagonist, you must establish the initial county clock. This represents the antagonist's motivations, wants, or struggles, and ticks away in the background while your table journeys around. We suggest linking your antagonist's motivation, and therefore the county clock, to the county verb. Let's look at my own campaign for an example. I want to create a web of antagonists and NPCs who are all contributing to the goal of breaking Essex's commons. While the ultimate order comes from the king, the day-to-day actions need to be carried out by a representative of the king. With this in mind, I decide that the High Sheriff of Essex, the king's direct representative in the county, is the best choice for this major antagonist. Doing some quick research, I learned that the High Sheriff of Essex in 1376 was Robert Fitzwilliam. Little other information on him exists, making him a flexible antagonist for the early part of my campaign. With the county verb being break, I decide that Fitzwilliam's motivation and the basis for the county clock is to starve out the people of Essex in order to break their spirits and turn them against one another. To this end, he and his accomplices, minor NPCs across the county, have increased food prices, started burning or confiscating farmland, and hoarding the harvests in their own manners. So, I title this county clock, Famine Takes Hold in Essex. With our county verb chosen, our points completed, and our antagonist and county clock established, step 4, our final step, is to complete the county sheet. First, the narrator should set the county's control level. This is done by determining the main antagonist control trait, using the authority figure control trait table, and adding that value to the total number of points in the county. In my own campaign, with High Sheriff Robert Fitzwilliam taking the role of the county's major antagonist, I look at the authority figure control trait table and see that a High Sheriff requires a roll of a D10. I roll that D10, getting a 6. I add this to the 23 points for Essex, giving a county control level of 29, and I enter this onto the county sheet in the designated space. Finally, the narrator needs to set the starting season, spring, summer, autumn or winter, and mark that on the county sheet too. In my own campaign, I decided that, as the 100 of Witham's assigned verb is to celebrate, and that's where I'll be starting my campaign, to start the campaign in summer. The point crawl can now commence.